Hi, my name is Fudge. I have the pleasure of serving as the pastor for Mosaic, Seattle. I have a beautiful wife, Kelly, and two incredible kids. Our daughter, Emery, is 9. Our son, Levi, is 7. And right now, I am probably sitting right next to them on our couch, watching this all together as a family. And I want to tell you, kids, stop climbing over the couch. Focus on what I'm saying. We're in church. We take this seriously. I'm just kidding. We're so glad you're here. Wherever it is you're joining us from today, thank you so much for being with us at Mosaic. You ever get lost, like truly lost? I know it's hard now with Waze and Google Maps and everything. Like, it's gotten to the point now where it feels like you can't get anywhere without looking up the address and getting the directions for where you're going before you even leave the house. But I remember years ago when I was just out of college, I was 22, I got home from school and I talked to my parents and I asked them if I could take my little brother on a road trip around the country together. And being the incredibly trusting parents they were, they said, sure, you can take him. He's had his driver's license for a few months. You guys go out and have this adventure. And we spent about 3 weeks driving all over the country. We went to baseball stadiums. We were big baseball fans, so we went to Wrigley Field and Fenway Park and Yankee Stadium and had this trip all mapped out. And back then, if you're gonna map it out, you actually had a map, a physical paper map. It was one of those big folding ones. You'd go to like AAA, you'd get one for every state, and you begin to map out your course for where you're gonna go, which sounds great on paper, except it's literally on paper, and it's this huge thing, and you don't have the details within it. And our plan as we went was to find places to camp everywhere we stopped. So we were on like that right out of college budget. So we didn't have much money and a lot of money to spend on hotels in every place we went. But that was part of the fun of it, is we were gonna figure out where we were going as we went. And I remember we were somewhere in Pennsylvania at one point. I think we actually went to Gettysburg that morning and we stayed there longer than we thought, and we started leaving, and we're like in these rolling hills, and we're looking for a place to stay. We didn't really have that night planned out all the way. So we're looking for a campground. It starts getting dark, it's getting later and later and later, and we're just driving along this country highway with nowhere really to pull off and stop. And finally, it's probably like 11 o'clock at night, and we see this sign that has an arrow pointing up this road going up a hill for a camp. And we're like, okay, cool, we'll go up there. So we end up pulling off this road. We wind up the hills. It seems like forever. We finally pull into this dirt driveway up this path, and we pull up to the building. We walk into the office, and we're like, do you have any camp spots available? We know it's late, but we just need a place for the night. And this woman looks at us like totally confused. She says, this is a youth detention camp. This is for kids who've had all kinds of legal problems, and this is their out to go through all these courses for self-improvement and betterment. And we're like, this is probably not the best place for us. We got ourselves in this spot because we were completely lost. You see, that's how my life's felt these last handful of months. It feels like every time I feel like I know where I'm going, a new detour emerges that pulls me off course again. And it's been, honestly, kind of an emotional roller coaster. There's stretches right now where I feel like I'm thriving, I know what I'm working toward, I'm focused, I'm driven, I know it's in front of us, and then it feels like the next week comes, and I'm totally disoriented again, and everything I thought we were going to be doing or that I was gonna be focusing on seems to be thrown off by a change of plans, and I struggle with that. And much of my stress with this is self-inflicted because I can be super tight control. I wanna feel like I have control over what's going on in my life and in my world. And it's not that I don't like change, I actually kind of like change, but I like to feel like I have control over the change that's coming in my life. And right now, it has rarely felt like I have any control over the changes that are coming. It's like this whirlwind of things that come up, and I'm just trying to adapt and keep my head above water. And maybe you've struggled with this as well. Maybe you are like me and you feel like every week feels like a brand new thing of uncharted waters. I think part of the question we're all asking ourselves, and I know I am, is what do I do when I feel like I'm getting off course? One of the most frustrating things is when you feel like you're actually crushing it in life, and then things out of your control actually interrupt that. In 2008, the summer of 2008, I was just about to finish grad school. I was writing my final paper, and I had worked hard for 3 years full-time, Felt like I put in all the work, all the effort, and I was ready to finish this paper, turn it in, graduate, and take on the world, to take that next step. While I was writing that paper, I took a break one day, and I turned the news on, and I see on the news that the stock market had fallen through the floor, and they're talking about this global recession coming. And I remember going like, the timing for this, it couldn't be worse. Like, I am right now finishing my last paper, prepared to go into the workplace, look for a job, take those steps. I'm ready to take on the world. And now it feels like everything is just disrupted and interrupted. And I'm caught in the middle of that. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And by the time I finished my paper and I turned it in, banks started to close. And I remember right around the corner from us, a bank closed. And there was hundreds of people lined up around the block waiting to get their money out. It was this season where everybody was panicking and in disarray. And I'm going, everything I had mapped out for where I was thinking I was going, for the destination I was pursuing, all of that seems to be lost in this moment, in disarray. So you've put all this work in, you think you know where you're going, you think you know the steps to take, you've done everything you think right, and then everything is disrupted by forces that you have no control over. And I remember over those next few months, I applied to hundreds of jobs without getting any calls back. And then I finally got one. And I started this job, and I worked there for over a year. And I just remember every day going into this job and going, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to do. I felt defeated and miserable. And I felt like my life was on pause. That everything I thought I was supposed to be going to do had been put on pause so I could just get by and survive. So I think one of the questions that I find myself asking myself, and I think we can all ask ourselves at various times in life, is what do we do when everything feels like it's in disarray? When you don't know what the next steps are, when you don't know what path to take. I've been spending a lot of time over these last few months in the book of Acts. It's something I love to go in there, and I love to uncover what it was that the people in the early church faced. What was it that they wrestled through? How did they overcome those challenges? And the life of Paul has always fascinated me. So we know the story of Paul. He was one who persecuted the church and had this radical, life-changing encounter with Jesus. He was given this very specific mission for his life. He would become the apostle to the Gentiles, that he would bring the message of Jesus all over the world, but he knew that the end goal, the final destination, was that he was going to find himself in Rome, sharing Jesus with the powers that be in the capital of the known world at that time. But in the meantime, his life was filled with constant struggle and fights. He had all of these problems that would emerge that would be part of his journey, part of his story leading him to that place. So for 30 years, he continued to work. And for 30 years, he held out hope, knowing that one day I'm going to get there. I know the destination. I see it in my future. And everything that's coming to me along the way is just part of my journey. And so he'd been beaten. He'd been shunned. He'd been turned away from. He'd been attacked. He'd ultimately been arrested. And he finds himself in this moment arrested and pleading his case. And while he's in this moment, he can actually be freed. He'd been wrongly imprisoned, but he saw an opportunity that in his arrest, he could actually petition Rome to go to Caesar to plead his case. Now, he didn't have to do that, but what he knew is by doing that, he would actually have the opportunity to fulfill that destiny to get to Rome, which had been the driving force in his life for decades. So he sees this opportunity with the risk associated with it, and he began that process. And this is where this passage picks up that I want to share with you today. And it's a long passage. I invite you to read it. So I'm just going to take pieces of it. Men, I see that our voyage is going to be disastrous, bring great loss to the ship and cargo, and to our own lives also. But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night, an angel of the God to whom I belong and to whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. you must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island." When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken into pieces by the pounding of the surf. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. See, in this moment, you have Paul, who actually sees this as the final steps on the journey that he had been on for so long. He thought this would be the final days before he got to the ultimate destination, the place he'd lived his life trying to get to. But as they're about to leave port, he actually can tell this is a bad idea. They're leaving in winter. They shouldn't be sailing this time of year. And he tries to warn them. And he even tells them, if we go, we're all going to die. What are you doing? This is a terrible idea. Now, we know that was Paul and his humanity speaking into what happened, thinking about what was coming. He could see the disaster looming, and he said, we're all going to die if we go. Now, we know that's not God speaking through Paul because that's not what happened. So in this moment, we can understand how Paul would feel that way. And it wasn't that there wasn't danger and there wasn't bad things that were to come. A massive hurricane came and blew them all over the sea. It says the sky was dark for 3 days. They couldn't see. They were starving while they were at sea. So it looks like every doomsday prediction that Paul had was coming true. And in this time is when an angel actually comes and speaks into Paul and reminds him exactly who it is that God said he is. The angel said, "Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you." See, when the angel spoke into Paul, what he was saying is, Paul, you are who God says you are. You still are exactly who God has said you are, and you still will fulfill the life that God has called you into. Your destination has not been lost. But this is but a detour in this time. So the angel had to remind Paul exactly who it is that he is and was in the midst of all of this, all that he thought was lost because of this. You see, there's a second piece of this that I think is so significant, that Paul was afraid of his own death, his own doom, his own destruction. But when the angel spoke to him, he said, neither you nor anybody on the ship will die. See, Paul's life, his salvation was never for himself. And even in this moment, the angel has to speak it back into him and remind him, your salvation is going to be shared with the people around you. You see, I love this moment because God speaks into him, reminds him of who he is, who he's called to be, the life that he's sought to live all of this time. And in this time where it seems like everything's in disarray, he's reminded that God is still with him and that God is still calling him into the future he had always called him into. You see, it's when a hurricane is in our life that faith is actually revealed. And that's what, speaking in Hebrews chapter 11, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. See, there's moments when we can't see how we're going to get to the destination we've been working toward, how we're going to overcome what's in front of us to get to that place that we've fought and we've worked and we've put all the effort in to get to. It can seem lost at times in life, but it doesn't mean it's not there still. It just means we may not be able to see it. And faith is having confidence that what God has spoken into you remains, even when the destination seems too far out of reach. And the story continues. We find that the hurricane would end. And hurricanes always come to an end. And the storms in our life will come to a stop, but it doesn't mean that the course is going to be immediately found. How are we going to get back on course to that destination? And it says that the ship would actually have to be wrecked onto this island, an island that they wouldn't know. So the captain continues forward and he sees land. And it says that he wrecks that ship. And now here's the interesting thing. We can think that that means it's a small boat that's just going to drive on shore and they'll climb out. But what this actually is a giant ship that can hold hundreds of people. And if the island's here, the ship comes in, it's going to stop into the rocks and sand well offshore. So the people were not on land. They still had to get off the ship and actually get to the land. It says, he, the captain, ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. This is how you get to shore. There will be times in our life that if we're going to get to shore, if we're going to get to land, we simply have to grab onto anything within reach. We might have to grab onto a plank or a board, a rope that somebody throws to us. Whatever it is, we keep going. That we have to stay the course. And sometimes that's going to be hard and challenging. See, there were people on this ship that didn't know how to swim at all. In desperation, they would have been grabbing for anything. The captain said, swim or swim. If you can't swim, grab onto something. And when challenges come and we're in these seasons of life that are difficult, whatever they are, there's times we simply must grab onto something to stay afloat so we can be pushed into shore. One of the most challenging things that's been in our life, I think right now in this season, is how do we parent well in this season? How do we care for our kids, help them not just survive, but thrive in the household, with education, with all these other things, their social life. And when I look back on what last spring was like, I felt like we did our best to make it through that season. And our kids, I think, continue to learn from home, and my wife did an incredible job. She's a teacher herself, so she was still teaching her class and then focusing on our kids, and it was a crazy stretch. And I think we did the best we could for that season to survive. We were grabbing onto planks and keeping our heads above water. But then this last summer, when the decisions started coming out that school would be online in this current year, we began to really wrestle with this because we don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. We want to have a vibrant home life. We want our kids to be growing and strong and have the best environment possible for their success. And it was one of those times we're looking at the landscape of what's in front of us and the unknowns and the unpredictabilities and the lack of information and all of these things. And every route forward looked kind of bad. None of them looked great. And so we'd stay up late and we would discuss this and we'd go, okay, well, what if we did this? What if we took this approach for this year? And, we're planning it out. We're like, well, we both have busy schedules during the day and we have responsibilities and we have work. And she's planning, Kelly's scheduled to be a teacher again this year, and our kids would be in school. And we're trying to figure out how the puzzle fits together. But there's these moments we know when every option before us has its own challenge. There is no great option. And sometimes you have to make the best decision you can of all the options that are imperfect. Now, I love in this passage throughout it, if you read this whole chapter, you're going to see over and over again, they're going to have to throw things off the ship that are not essential. They're throwing off cargo. They're throwing everything overboard so they can keep going on their journey. And there's times, I think, for all of us that we have to evaluate what's in our life at any current moment. And we have to go, what here is the essential things and what can be discarded? Then you have to look and go, what's the destination I'm looking for? What is it I'm actually trying to accomplish here? Where is it that we want to go? And allow that to inform all of our decisions. So we continue to work through this decision as a couple and made the decision that we felt was best. I don't know that there was one best decision for everybody, but we decided we're going to do whatever we can, and every decision that we'll make will be to provide the best environment for our kids to thrive this year. It's in times like this that I find that I can confuse the journey with the destination. That the decisions along the way feel like the destination. They feel like that we're working toward, but the destination is actually that thing that is actually much farther away. Paul's destination was 30 years in the making. And so everything he did along the way was just simply part of the journey to get him to that place. In 2005, Kelly and I were newly married and we moved to Southern California. We moved to Pasadena, and I was going to graduate school. And I thought that for 1 or 2 years that was our destination. That the plan was for us to just get away for a while. I was going to study, accomplish that, and move on to the next phase of life, whatever that might look like. But once we got here, we found ourselves actually building a life here, that we found a community here, that we had friends, that we built a home, that we started a family. See, moving for school wasn't the destination. It was part of the journey to help us get to the destination. And similarly, when I took that job, when I felt like my life was on pause, that was just part of the journey. Because I can look back at that now and I can see that in that moment, God was actually graciously providing for us as he says he will. That God is with us in those times of struggle. And I can look back at that 1 year in this job where I had to push through every day, that I wasn't excited to get up and to work, as a time where God provided an opportunity to provide for my household, to learn new skills, to grow faithfulness and perseverance, to actually work within my life in a season that I thought was lost, to actually better prepare me to continue on the journey for my life, to lead me to the destination that he's prepared for me and called me into. See, those moments weren't lost. That wasn't a time of pause. That was actually a time of preparation. That was just part of the journey. I just didn't have eyes to see it. And I wonder how often we're in these times when we feel like everything is slipping through our fingers and we look at that as lost moments or lost opportunities. But it's actually just part of the journey that God's taking us on to prepare us for where we're ultimately going to get to. So when the ship approached the island, it says, when daylight came, they did not recognize the land. They didn't recognize what was in front of them. There's going to be times throughout our life when we look ahead of us and we're like, I don't even know where I'm at right now. Everything feels unfamiliar. Everything looks confusing. I don't have a map for the road that I'm on right now, and I don't know how to get back on course. The course that you thought you were on may have been lost, may have been destroyed. It may not exist at all. But see, you are not lost. You're just in an unfamiliar land. See, right now you might be in a place in life and you don't even know where you are. Everything looks unfamiliar. That the roads you were traveling on may have been lost or destroyed along the way. The shortest distance between 2 points may be a straight line. But that's not the case when a mountain emerges out of nowhere. See, you are not lost. You are just in an unfamiliar land. What I love about this story is it reminds all of us that God is faithfully with you in this time, that you are still who it is that God has created you to be, and that he will see you through to the destination that's still in front of you. So what do you do when it feels like you've lost your way? When everything seems to have been pulled out? When everything looks unfamiliar, you stay the course. What do you do when you're exhausted, when you're tired? You stay the course. What do you do when you are in the water? It's coming upon you and you can't get to shore. You grab onto anything within reach, pull yourself up, and you stay the course. And you get onto that land. But here's the thing we all need to hold on to. That if you're a follower of Jesus, you're a swimmer. God is with you right now, Jesus is with you in the midst of whatever challenges you face. That God has actually given you the power and the strength to swim to shore, and not just for you, but so that you can be the one who throws the rope to others, who pulls them to shore with you. See, what this reminds us is that all of us, no matter what we have going on right now, still have Jesus with us in these moments. That you have the strength and the power in you to get to shore. And yes, the land may look unfamiliar, but you are not off course. You are simply in an unfamiliar land. And still, others may be here today, and you feel like you're drowning right now. That there's nothing within reach. That you don't know what to grab onto, that life may feel like it's in disarray and you can't see anything. That right now, hope is absent and the destination feels lost. See, for some of you, the very first step on this is to actually receive this hope, this life with Jesus, and the promise that he will be with you into the future. You may be here today, and you do feel like you're drowning right now, that life is overwhelming you, that you are in the water sinking, and that you can't swim to land, you have nothing to grab onto. See, if that's you right now, the first step for you is to actually receive Jesus in your life today. That Jesus promises that he will be with you no matter what comes at you in life. That he will be the one who pulls you out of the ocean and pulls you to shore. If you're here today and you know that Jesus is the first step forward to get you on path, on course to the destination that God's created for you, you just pray these simple prayers with me today. Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. And these aren't magic words. All of your struggles won't end. Your life will not be without obstacles in the future, but the gift is that the God who's created everything and created you will be with you intimately in those moments and continue to keep you on course no matter what comes at you in life. We thank you, Lord God, for time together today. And I thank you that you're a God who's with us in the midst of whatever life throws at us. That there is no obstacle that prevents us from getting us to the destination that you've called us into, so long as we hold tightly onto you. I pray for each person, wherever they're at right now, whatever's happening in life, that they would be so filled with hope, so filled with encouragement, that they would be able to walk with such passion and such focus into that future, that there's no challenge they cannot overcome, because you have promised to be with us along the way. In Jesus' name, amen.